Our God is a mountain mover, and He's still moving mountains every day. And the good news is, He can move your mountains too. Hi there, this is Sue Cooper. Welcome to It's a God Thing radio program. Thanks for joining us today. You're about to hear some awesome interviews with believers in Jesus Christ who will tell you how God has revealed and proved Himself to them by moving mountains they were unable to move by themselves. They say that their stories can only be described as a God thing. Ready for a blessing? Let's roll. Here's our host, Chuck Cooper, with a great God thing story.
Well, folks, we want to welcome to our show today Mary Ann Hurd from Woodstock, Georgia, who has a tremendous God thing story, an almost unbelievable God thing story that she'd like to share with you. So welcome to the program, Mary Ann, and tell us what this story is all about.
Well, it's about a miracle that happened in my life, so I'd like to share with you what God did for me.
Well, good. We want to hear that.
All right. Back in July of 1996, my husband Rudy and I were living in Tampa, Florida, and I'd been he was at work, of course, and I was out on the tennis court all morning long, and it was a typical hot Florida day. And didn't feel so good when we were leaving the courts, and started having considerable pain in my lower stomach, in the lower abdomen, and found that I was not able to go to the bathroom when I stopped by.
Oh, boy.
And got home. I thought, well, I just didn't drink enough water. So I got home and I drank several glasses of water, tried taking a shower, went to the bathroom, passed a little blood, and thought I was going to faint. Made it to the phone, called my doctor. At that time, Rudy was not home with me, and he did come in. The doctor said, come straight to my office. Let's check you out. And as I said earlier, I was in considerable pain. It was just really uncomfortable.
Now, was this something new to you, Mary Ann, or had you experienced this before, or just...
Brand new, never had any problems, have played tennis for years, have been in excellent health. In fact, my doctor now tells me that I'm blessed with very good health.
Well, good.
But anyway, we went to the doctor's office. He checked me out, and he says, we need to get you right in the hospital. Your kidneys are not functioning.
My goodness.
Yeah. So, luckily, his office was right in front of the hospital. We went straight over to the hospital. They put stents in both my kidneys to help them drain. And they proceeded to take x-ray after x-ray from one position after another, and they'd send me back to my room, and they'd come back and take more x-rays, and they were not able to pinpoint what was wrong, so they went to a sonogram. They said, we're going to take you to the radiology and do a sonogram. Mm-hmm. And at this point, my urologist was there, and my urologist was a member of our church in Tampa, a fine Christian man, and was very fortunate to have him as my doctor. And he had found a nephrologist, kidney specialist for me. Mm-hmm. And the head of the radiology department was there, and the technician, and my primary care doctor who had taken me to the hospital mm-hmm. was there. So we had a good group of us there taking care of me, and I could hear what they were saying because I was wide awake. And first one doctor, then another said, oh, I see a mass. Do you see this mass? And they all were agreeing that they saw this huge mass that was in my right kidney, mm-hmm. in my right kidney. And then they take me back to my room. Later that day, my urologist my urologist came in and said, here's our diagnosis. He said, you have stones in your kidneys. You have stones in your gallbladder. I just had stones and everything that could have stones. And he said, in your right kidney, you have a large mass. And he said, we're 99% sure that you have a cancerous tumor there. What we want to do is do a CAT scan to see if it's grown beyond the wall of the kidney. And he was very reassuring. He said, you can live with one kidney, Marianne, and you'll do just fine. If we have to take the kidney out, you'll be fine. But he said, could we have prayer? And I said, by all means.
Sure.
And I am blessed with a lot of Christian friends, and the people from my church were there praying for me, and our best friends belonged to another church, and their pastor was there praying for me, and Rudy's mom belonged to the First Baptist Church here in Atlanta, where Charles Stanley is the pastor, and the head of their prayer department called me long distance after Rudy had called the family to tell them what was going on with me, and she called me that night, and we had prayer on the phone. So
you were all prayed up.
We were bombarding heaven with prayers.
Well, that's the way to do it.
And I've always believed you should be specific in what you ask the Lord for. So when our friend's pastor was leaving, he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "When you pray for me, ask that I'll get good news." When they do more tests on me, so they took me down the next day for a CAT scan. And I'm here to tell you that they could not find the mass. My kidneys and...
Did I hear you wrong?
No, you heard me right. They could not see the mass.
Nothing.
Nothing was there. No stones, no mass.
No stones?
No mass.
My goodness.
And the doctors are scratching their head, might I add.
Well, duh.
They couldn't explain what was going on, but they knew they had all seen that mass.
Sure they did.
And they had prepared me for what I might face. And they said, well, what we really need to do at this point is have an MRI, because that's the definitive test, and it will see in there, and maybe the CAT scan's just not seeing it. So they scheduled me for late that night for an MRI, and I will tell you that I had had an MRI before with a knee injury, and they asked me, was I afraid? I said, no, not a problem. And I got to the first MRI session, and I panicked. It was the closed MRI, like a coffin.
Yes, right.
And so they took me back to the room, and I went again later and had the MRI successfully, and they came in with the results. I had a clear picture. The tumor was gone, the stones were gone, the CAT scan was correct, the MRI confirmed that all the stones and the mass had been removed from my body. And my doctor came in to talk to me the next day. He said, I don't know how to explain it. And I said, well, I understand what has happened with me. God took it away. I had a miracle. So I have to tell you that he's still in the miracle business. I've been happy to share my story since 1996 with a lot of people, and I'm proud to say that my husband loves to share it too. So that's my story.
Man, oh man, what a story, Marianne. What was your, let me ask you a question. What was your reaction when you heard the first results that they didn't see what they had filmed showing previously? What was your first reaction when you heard that? Was it they made a mistake, or?
No. But let me back up to tell you that after the first night before they did the CAT scan and found that I didn't have them, have the tumor, the stone, I went to sleep with the most peaceful feeling. I was not afraid. I told my urologist, if the Lord wants me, I'm not afraid to die. Mm-hmm. I really am not ready to leave my husband yet.
Right.
That part makes me want to cry, I guess. But I was not surprised. No, I was happy, obviously.
Obviously, sure.
I was very happy, but I was not surprised because I know who I believe in.
Absolutely. So, well, your husband Rudy is here with us. And Rudy, I'd like to ask you, and we didn't talk about this before, but I'd like to ask you, sir, what was your reaction when you heard the results that this tumor and this mass had suddenly disappeared?
Well, obviously I was extremely happy and grateful to God. It's the only answer for it not being there.
Exactly. And now, Marianne, did you discuss this with the other physicians, or did you have the opportunity to? The ones that were not Christians, or that you didn't know whether they were Christians or not?
Well, obviously, they were not available for me. My urologist and I were thankful, and obviously, as I said, he's a fine Christian man. My primary care physician, who put me in the hospital, I did discuss with him how I felt about it and what I thought had happened. And hopefully with those two, they passed it along. I was not sure at that point that my primary care physician was a Christian,
right.
But hopefully God showed him.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we really, really appreciate your sharing this story, and it's going to be an encouragement to both the believers that are listening and also perhaps to some not yet believers in listening. So I think I know the obvious answer to this question, but Marianne, would you say that relieving you of this condition and making that mass disappear, was that a God thing?
That was definitely a God thing, and I'd like to add that there's not a day that goes by that I don't thank him and remind my friends who've had similar things happen in their life that we ask and ask and ask for healing, and then when it's all over, we just go about our business like nothing ever happened. But I'm, to this day, thankful to him.
Well, sure,
and
you are.
I try never to forget to thank him, and I truly believe it was a God thing. Thank you for letting me share it.
Oh, you're welcome. And speaking of that, I'd like to ask you one final question, Marianne, and that is, do you believe that God has given you a personal ministry to share what he's done with you because of this incident?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, I do. I've shared it with other people. The very first opportunity I had was on a trip that Rudy and I took after I was healed and we took a trip, and there was a guy from New Zealand who was there, and he had a brain tumor, and he was petrified, and he was not a Christian, and I was able to share my story with him. And there were some other Christians on this trip. And as we were leaving, it was at a dinner, and as we were leaving, the other two friends who were Christians came up and said that they felt like God had allowed me to experience this so that I could share it with
him.
Yes.
Oh.
So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it with us and also with our listeners.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Wow, what a great story. I don't know about you, but we here at It's a God Thing Radio are both inspired and encouraged and even awed when we hear stories like the one you're hearing today. We think God Thing stories prove to all who hear them how God continues to work every day in the lives of his believers. We also believe strongly that sharing God Thing stories with not yet believers might just cause them to remember similar events in their own lives.
Hopefully, those remembrances will cause them to consider that there may be something to God and Jesus after all. Sharing your own God thing story, yes, your own story, is a great way to witness to your family, friends, co-workers, schoolmates, and even strangers. Who won't listen when you begin a conversation by saying, "My goodness, you won't believe what happened to me a while back," or, "Gosh, I'm so excited about what happened to a couple at our church. Let me tell you about it." Then tell your own story or share one you've heard here. Doing so just might cause someone to accept Jesus as Savior and Lord.
Now let's get back to today's program. We're sitting here today with our friend Brenda that we met while we were work camping in Kentucky. Brenda has a really neat story to tell about how God orchestrated releasing her from being a prisoner in her own home. So, Brenda, we welcome you to the program today. We appreciate your willingness to share this very personal story. So, how did you become a prisoner in your own home?
Well, it just started out as a friendship, led into a relationship, and became very abusive in years down the road. And it was abusive to the point where my family was threatened if I were to leave this relationship. And God never wants us to put others in jeopardy. He doesn't want us to put ourselves in jeopardy. But this relationship was like that. And for Lord, I would sacrifice my life before I sacrifice my family.
So he threatened your family?
Yes.
And in what way? Obviously you were fearful for them.
Absolutely. He threatened to burn the house down one night while they were all sleeping if I were to leave him, if he were not able to find me.
Now, before you got married, was this, was there any indication that he was going to be abusive to you?
Actually, yes, there were times, but you forgive and you hope that people don't want to do that anymore. It's a horrible thing to live in an abusive relationship, but you have faith that things will get better and that your love will grow, not worsen.
Mm-hmm. Now, how long were you a prisoner?
Years, probably 8 or 10 years.
8 or 10 years?
Yes.
And you would not leave for fear that were you afraid that he would harm you more or harm your children?
I was never afraid he would harm the children. It was mostly a him and me thing. Alcohol certainly was involved, which is never a good thing. But I always had hope that it would come to an end out of the love for me and my children. And it didn't.
And it got worse and worse, and this is when he threatened if you ever left him that he was going to burn down the house with your parents and your family in the house. How difficult was it for you to live like that?
Well, it was very difficult. You just never know when he's going to turn. It seemed like mornings were fine, evenings when he first came home from work were fine. And as the night grew and the drinking intensified, or if he didn't have anything to drink at all, it seemed to intensify. So it was just unpredictable. You could never really know when the next round of abuse was going to turn.
Did you ever threaten him that you were going to leave?
No, the threat was put in place for me that if I ever left, so don't think about it.
And you had to live with this for 9 years?
Off and on, yes.
Goodness me, Brenda. Well, tell us how the Lord orchestrated getting out of jail, so to speak.
Well, it got to a point in his life where he wasn't happy with the job he was in, so he moved out of state to seek alternative employment.
So he moved?
He moved.
And left you where you were?
Left me. I was actually caring for an elderly relative. And he called me months later and wanted me to join him. And that's when I said no, I wasn't going to be able to do that I was going to stay where I was.
And what was his response to this, telling him no? That's the first time you told him no, it sounds like.
Well, it's the first time I really kind of stood up to him. And he said at first that he would find a way back to reach me at some point.
As a threat?
I wasn't quite sure how to take it, but I think it probably was a threat. But I think it was something I had to stand up to at the time and start being stronger for myself in the Lord with faith that he wouldn't come back. And he didn't.
And he didn't.
No.
And so you then were, now you mentioned that you were taking care of an elderly relative.
Yeah.
So you really were double trapped. You couldn't leave because of that too, correct?
I couldn't leave at the time. Eventually we did put her in a home, and I was freed up to leave and not make myself available to
his whim.
his whim, or for him to be able to find me any longer.
Would you say, Brenda, that getting you out of this abusive relationship, even after 9 long years, was a God thing?
It was absolutely a God thing.
Well, you're
You
doing
can't
well
do it
now.
without faith. You
Yes.
have to have the faith.
Did you grow up in the church, or how long have you
did.
been a Christian? Okay.
All my life, I was first baptized as 12 years old. I believed in Lord. I grew up with a lot of Christian cliches, and at some point wanted to find in the Bible for myself where these cliches were hidden.
Sure.
And certainly they were all there. I grew up in a wonderful Christian family, and have walked very closely with the Lord. And through all the abuse, I knew his angels were around, surrounding me and protecting me from extreme harm.
Now, you were surrounded by your family, and they were Christians as well?
Yes.
And you were surrounded. Were they aware of what was going on in your life?
No, actually they weren't.
And you were fearful of that they might interfere and cause him to go off and do something he shouldn't do?
Well, or a lot of things are in God's times, and sometimes people force you to do things before the time is right, and that's when severe things happen.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, Brenda, but what you're telling us is that you, because of your love for the Lord, because of your love for this elderly family member, that you were willing to take the abuse because you loved your family too, and you did not want harm to come to anybody.
That is correct.
You told me earlier
Yes.
that you felt like if somebody was going to suffer, it needed to be you rather than your loved ones.
That's correct.
Boy, what a big heart that is.
God lays his life for us. I'm going to lay my life for those I love.
Very good, Brenda. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been great for Sue and me to get to know you. And we love you in the Lord, Brenda, and thank you again.
Thank you, Chuck.
Today our guest is Stan Carlson of Andover, Minnesota.
God made the earth and all about, and also man whose will can doubt. A choice he's given you and me, continued bondage or set free. A sacrifice for us he made, from heaven to earth his Son he bade. A journey God was willing to take for all of man's salvation's sake. His Son descended from heaven's realm to a world of sin that overwhelms. From glorification with God above to incarnation in a world he loves. From infinite worth to a lowly birth. From teaching and dying by crucifying. His body broken for you and me, and blood was spilt for all to see. Then conquered death, he rose again, ascending then to heaven above, back to his Father's eternal love. One day he's coming down to earth to collect our very puny worth. Till then remember our reward, eternal glory with our Lord, as now this sacred bread we break, a symbol of his body take. And oh, the love that spilled for me from on the cross of Calvary, love transcending all of time's salvation's gift is yours and mine. Go tell another now today, for time's too short, please don't delay. Each day with Christ in heaven 'twill be awesome, exciting, as our God will see. Incredible pleasure each day of the year, not one of hardship, worry, or fear. Enjoyment beyond all of life's measure. No more deadlines, hassles, or everyday pressure. Can you imagine a painless day or one spent in incredible play? Not a headache, backache, or down with the flu. No more death and destruction or parting for you. Friendly faces, ones that we love. That's what's waiting for us up above. The alternate plan for the unsaved man. No love or compassion, but only the damned. Judgment and torture alone in hell, all by yourself on your own life to dwell. Selling yourself for a sip of water, why didn't you listen before this all mattered? Fires of hell burning and searing, no one to comfort, no one is hearing. Everyone lived must answer to God, for all who have been here this road have trod. One day there will be a judgment for all. What is your answer when Jesus calls? Will there be gnashing of teeth when you're rejected by him, or excited wonder as he welcomes you in? Oh, dear one, put your trust in the Lord. There's only one way to get life's true reward. Say yes to Jesus, who's calling you, and your soul will be saved for eternity through.
My God is a mountain mover. Got a problem in my pathway. I feel a frozen peace.
Wow, what a great half hour this has been. Tune in next time for more great God Things stories, and tell all your friends to tune in too. Oh yeah, one more thing. If you or someone you know has a verifiable story which needs to be told, please email a brief summary to us at mystory@itsagodthingradio.com. That's my story, all one word, at itsagodthingradio.com. See you next time.